The NFL is 10 weeks into the year for all but 2 teams, and the way the season has panned out for some teams has gone according to plan, while others has not gone according to plan. Sunday was a very weird day for football, as we only had 5 early games and 6 afternoon to evening games, which generally does not happen. We had a scoregami in the Tampa Bay Carolina game, and almost 3 scores. They escaped the Jaguars with a win. Now we will discuss every big takeaway from week 10, and today will be a little different of a video because it's not going to be primarily team takeaways like they usually are, but more so player takeaways from this past week. There will be both, to be clear, and as always they are in no order of importance and are generally the biggest takeaways from week 10. Now before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now let's begin. And we're going to start today's video in the Motor City to discuss the football team and the Lions. The Lions barely beat Washington on Sunday despite being up at a point late in the third quarter with a score of 24-3. Credit to the Lions for winning, but it should have never been this close. Now, if you want to say a win is a win, as fans love to say, then you can 100% say that, as it is applicable here. The takeaway though, and this isn't anything new, is that Matt Patricia should be fired. The Lions were a 59-yard field goal away from being sent to overtime by Washington, and who knows what would have happened had they got there. They did win, but the question I would ask is, can the Lions, and can you as the viewer watching this, ever see them winning a Super Bowl with Matt Patricia? The answer is no, absolutely not, and I've said this and asked this about the Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer, who is far more successful as a head coach than Patricia is and probably ever will be. They should have never been in a situation that they were, as Matt Stafford led a game-winning drive, so credit to him for doing that, and credit to Detroit for getting a win, but their coach should be fired. Now, had they lost the game, I do think he would have been fired, but that's a different discussion. We all know he should be, and I wanted to start the video off by saying it was poor coaching and poor decision making that led them to be in that situation to begin with. And next we go to Las Vegas to discuss the Broncos and Raiders. The Raiders absolutely demolished Denver on Sunday, and fantasy owners were very pleased with how Josh Jacobs performed. The takeaway is not only are the Broncos not a great football team, but I think it is time for them to start looking beyond the Drew Lock era. Lock finished 2019 4-1 as a starter, with his only loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, and looked like the long-term answer. However, 2020 hasn't been kind to Lock, to say the least, as in 7 games he has thrown just 7 touchdown passes to 10 interceptions, and hasn't looked anywhere close to the player he was in 2019. To show how bad he has been in 2020, his completion percentage is nearly 10 points lower from year 1 to year 2, and his passer rating has dropped by nearly 25 points. What is frightening for Broncos fans is they invested a first-round pick in Jerry Jeudy and a second-round pick in KJ Hamler to help Drew Lock's development out, but simply put, it hasn't. I think the truth has come out this year on him, and unless something seriously changes between now and the end of 2020, Denver will select a quarterback in the first round of next year's draft. With a class as loaded as the 2021 class is at the quarterback position, it's a given, and while we knew from the start that Denver would not be competing for a Super Bowl this year, largely due to a second-year quarterback and being in the same division as Patrick Mahomes, Drew Lock, fair or not, will have the final 7 games to play for his job, because if he finishes 2020 with 14 touchdown passes and 20 interceptions with a 66 passer rating, they're not going to say, oh, well, it was a COVID offseason and he'll be good in year 3. That's just not a reality in the NFL, and sometimes NFL stands for not for long, and that's really unfortunate because I wanted Lock to Jeudy or Lock to Sutton to work out and be a thing for the next 10 years. And next we go to Miami to discuss the Dolphins. For how much discussion, and understandably so, let me add that, is surrounding the Bills right now with how their game ended, the Dolphins played a great game in their own rights and are out to a 6-3 start. Not only that, but they have 100% found their franchise quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa, as he improved to a 3-0 as a starter and has thrown a touchdown in all of those starts. From the Chargers side, this was the first game where Justin Herbert looked normal or not like a superstar, as he threw for less than 200 yards, but the best thing that can happen for them at this point is to lose, as they're technically not mathematically eliminated, but let's face it, they are. I don't think Miami will go to the Super Bowl or anything crazy like that this year, or maybe even make the playoffs, as there are so many good teams in the AFC, but if they do, they will be thorns in many teams' sides. Now when I say this, I don't mean it for it to sound like slander, more so praising the Dolphins, but teams will want to face the Browns or Raiders before they want to face the Miami Dolphins. Their defense is great, and Tua will grow into his own even more down the stretch, and they could be a very dangerous team by January. Top AFC teams would certainly not want to play them, and if they get into the tournament, that would be a successful season in itself. And now we discuss Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. Russell is, and I want this to be clear, a very good and elite player for that matter, but the team around him simply is not. Yes, there are players on that roster like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Chris Carson, and obviously all of those guys are good players, but it's just not enough to get them to the Super Bowl. They are now 6-3 after a 23-16 loss to the Rams, and what is concerning is how bad they played and how the Rams made Russell look. There were passes where Russ simply forced the football into areas where he simply normally would not do, and it showed at the end of the game. Also, while we are on this, credit to Jalen Ramsey for holding DK Metcalf to 4 targets to 2 catches for 28 yards, as that's an incredible accomplishment in itself. Russell Wilson, and whether you would like to admit this or not if you're a Seahawks fan, is not the leading MVP candidate anymore, and that is very clear, and because of his performance today, Russell's poor performance that is, Patrick Mahomes looks even better as an MVP candidate. I'm not going to say anything overreactionary like Russ isn't a top 5 or top 10 quarterback anymore, because he obviously is, he just was not one on Sunday. And next we go to Pittsburgh to discuss the Steelers. They are now 9-0 with a commanding win over the Cincinnati Bengals. Quarterback Ben Roethlisberger threw for over 330 yards and 4 touchdowns on Sunday, and the Steelers reminded everyone why they are the last undefeated team in the NFL. They made Joe Burrow uncomfortable for a lot of the game, and it was a big reason why they won by 26 points. Now, if you want to be the ultimate naysayer and say something like, oh, it was the Bengals and they did exactly what they were supposed to do, and everything of that nature, then yes, they did, but they went above expectations. The spread for this game was just 7 points, and for how good the Steelers are, people certainly love discrediting them and love to constantly put them down. In large part, it is due to being in the same conference as a player like Patrick Mahomes, but they are elite in their own rights. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster has went from the number 2 option to the number 1 option, meaning from 2018 to now, and has become in a sense what AB used to be, and that's taking a lot of the defense's attention so his other teammates can get involved. Now, I'm not saying Juju is as good as AB was, or putting a player like Chase Claypool down, but what I am saying is without Juju Smith-Schuster, this is a different offense. He finished Sunday's game with 9 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown, while teammate Deontay Johnson went for over 115 yards and Chase Claypool had 2 touchdowns in his own rights. Most importantly though, for all 3 guys, the Steelers got the win. And next we go to New England to discuss the Ravens-Patriots game. First, credit to the Patriots for playing in abysmal weather conditions, as it was awful to say the least. Second, and I can't say this enough, but I wish tight end Nick Boyle the best in his recovery, as that injury was ugly. I watched it live, and when the play went down, I knew right away it was awful without ever needing a replay. That was hands down one of the ugliest injuries I think we've seen in some time, but anyways, back to the Ravens team performance. First, this game is not on Lamar Jackson at all. He played good enough to get a win, but with the Ravens defense not being able to stop the run, and in a game where the weather was as bad as it was fairly obvious what the Patriots were going to try to do, which of course was run the football. Cam Newton threw for just 118 yards, and when a team knows what's coming, it makes it easier to stop the opposing offense, but that didn't seem to matter much on Sunday night. Now for the Ravens offense. Very rarely can you ever put a game on a single player, but I have to address how bad the center Matt Skura was against New England. There were seemingly countless times where he was snapping it to the left or to the right or just not getting it to its destination. If they had a different center, then who knows what happens over the course of the game. Yes, the conditions were bad, but New England had to play through the exact same weather. Just being honest, I don't see any way the Ravens go deep in the playoffs this year, and it's very possible Lamar starts his playoff career 0-3. And that's if they even get there, as there are 6 teams right now with a 6-3 record in the AFC. I do think they will get there, to be clear, but I don't think they're going to do anything of note in January. And last we go to the desert to discuss the game between the Bills and the Cardinals. This game was an instant classic and had one of the best endings to a game we've seen in some time. The Bills thought they had the game won when Stefon Diggs scored a late go-ahead touchdown, only for the best receiver in football to one-up him. What a game it was to say the least, and Deandre Hopkins called game. There's nothing bad to take away from either team here, as it was two young teams battling to the wire, and through 10 games, the Bills sit at 7-3, and through 9, the Cardinals sit at 6-3. I really hope we see these teams meet in the Super Bowl one day, as Josh Allen vs. Kyler Murray would be legit and would be a very fun big game to watch. If there is one thing Arizona proved through this, it's that to never count them out. And for Buffalo, who is on the wrong end of a very tough loss, there's really not a lot that can be said. I would imagine this is similar to how the Saints felt after the Minneapolis Miracle, when you realize your team played a great game, but unfortunately ended up with a loss. Now for other takeaways, DeAndre Hopkins is the best receiver in football. The Packers are not that great. Shout out the Giants for being half a game out of first place despite having a 3-7 record, and credit to Tom and the Bucs for taking care of business. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Each only take a second to do, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.